Ladies and gentlemen, we are live!
We sure are live. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I hope everyone is having a fantastic Thursday afternoon. Is it Thursday? It's Thursday. I just chugged my 5-hour energy. Someone needs to get me a 5-hour energy sponsorship. So I'm ready to roll here. I just want to make sure I didn't mess anything up really quick because we all know how great I am. Okay, cool. At tech stuff with live streaming. It just never seems to work. All right. Switch to StreamYard, so hopefully this is even better. Well, today, folks, we have something very special and different. So usually when I come on here for a show, it is just, chilling, talking, hanging out. Today, I have a very special guest, and we're going to talk about a really cool project. And for those of you like me who like to geek out on the businessier side of the nerd world, I guess you could say, entertainment even, you're going to love this. And yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun. Thank you. I see some love for the display already. So this is where I've been. Everyone's like, hey, where you been? That's one of the things. It's been busy. But look, I'm almost done. The Sentinel, I need to get him hung up a little higher. He's kind of shorter than I anticipated when I made that space. But we will have time for a Q&A later this show. But if you have ever thought about the movie business and like what it would be like to be in it, we're going to talk to someone who is in the thick of it. If you want to get on for you have your comment read immediately, hit the super chat. I never say it, but it just makes it easier for me to actually see it. What else do I need to tell you? Guess that's it. So without further ado, my guest, Michael Davis. How are you, sir?
I am very excited, and thank you for having me on the show. I've been stoked. And I buy Red Bull. I'm going to have to get on the 5-hour energy.
So I kicked the Red Bull probably, 15 years ago because I was a big Red Bull and vodka guy at night.
Yes.
And you do not mix those two. They don't mix well for your heart. They're not good.
I can't remember the filmmaker's name, but I heard a story about a guy that was having like 5 Red Bulls a day and it burned out his stomach lining, right? And now he can't eat anything because it upsets his stomach. But that's when you're directing, you're always so tired. And so I understand the 5, but when I was doing shoot 'em up, I would only do 2 a day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Well, so that's why I do the 5 hours. I get like a 1-hour boost, but the problem with them is it's like you do them every day, they do nothing for you.
Exactly.
You save them for a special occasion, and you get that hit. You get that hit you need.
Yeah, it's like the blue pill for just living.
That's right. So for those of you who might not be familiar, Michael is the writer and director of Shoot 'em Up, which I'll talk about here in a few minutes. And he's got a new project that kind of stems from that we're going to talk about on today's show. So to kind of do an introduction to it, Shoot 'em Up, I had never seen the movie till we first started talking about a year ago. And I'm like, hey, wife, tonight we're going to watch this. And she's like, okay. We had no clue what we were watching. No clue. And because I feel like it was totally categorized by everything wrong. It's like action thriller. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're watching Die Hard. Not Die Hard. Definitely not like that. I loved it. It was very, very funny. To me, that was more of a comedy than it was an action thriller, I got to tell you.
Well, it's definitely not reality-based. And so if you only had 3 of the action sequences with a lot more story, it would feel not so funny. But because it's just so relentless and now you're going to do this, it becomes absurd. But if you took the sequences out, they're more like Die Hard sequences. It's the collective that makes it absurd.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I had to refresh my memory. So I was doing a little bit of research earlier, just kind of all right, I want to see some of the comments on YouTube, about the trailer. I couldn't believe the cult following this thing has. What are we, almost 20 years later, 2007. So almost 20 years.
But the thing that was amazing, it was less than a year ago, there's this reviewer guy named Space Ice. Did you see that one?
I did not.
Okay. He goes, Shoot 'em Up is mankind's greatest achievement. And so there you go. You know it has a cult following when somebody does that almost like 20 years later. It's like, hey, I'm remembered, and that's cool.
Yeah, that is hilarious. But it's crazy. Like, so as I'm looking at this, I'm looking at like some of the people describe it, because it's one of those things where it's like, if someone asked me to describe it, I wouldn't know how to do it. This was the best I heard. It's Sin City plus the Pacifier plus the Punisher. I'm like, yeah, that sounds.
You could if you were trying to get to the story, but the feeling, and I don't think I totally achieved it. I kept saying I wanted to make it Run Lola Run with a gun.
Okay.
Run Lola Run.
Long time.
And I wanted it to be this relentless, like it just kept going, because I always feel like action movies are kind of like porn movies, right? Yeah. They put the story in there, but you really just want to get to them getting it on, right?
Yes.
And so I felt, well, let's get rid of the foreplay and let's just get to it and have action, action, action. If people haven't seen it, it's all the clever things you can do with a gun. It's like it starts out with Clive Owen delivering a baby in the middle of a gunfight. Yeah. And he even uses his gun to shoot the umbilical cord. Later on, he's making love to Monica Bellucci and the bad guys come in and he's shooting everybody while he's still inside Monica Bellucci. He falls out of an airplane. So it's a gunfight in midair. Every action scene has its own theme. There's no repetition. There's the car chase one. There's and you just going back to the whole toy thing. I was thinking about it. The great thing about collecting toys is that they brought you so much joy as a kid, but as an adult, you recognize how meaningful they were in terms of bringing you happiness. And when I was growing up, I was this giant James Bond fanatic. I still am. And they brought me so much joy, right, that I wanted to put it into a movie. And what I liked was the clever way the action hero got out of a situation. It was a wish fulfillment. I wanted to be that guy. And I just like seeing the hero beat the bad guys. So
is that why Clive Owen was your guy? Because he was one of the ones considered for Casino Royale back in the day.
Yeah, at the time he was, he's going to be nominated for an Academy Award for Children of Men. He was the it actor at the time. And again, I have to thank my career. A lot of it is that New Line wanted to make it, but Clive had seen some online reviews of Shoot 'em Up. And I had said on these YouTuber shows that I would love Clive Owen. And when he saw the following and the excitement online on YouTube, that's when he said yes, not because we made overtures to him. So you guys really have, like, people watch you for the pulse of what's going on.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I didn't know that. That was not in my research.
Yeah. But, I was also thinking, and again, because, this is a more movie-centric episode, and I showed you this a little earlier, but, yes. I, as a kid, loved these Gilbert James Bond scenarios, right? And I have all of them, but it made me think, when I was a kid, of course, I would take them out of the box and I would create my own stories and my own action adventure. The couch would be like the cliffs or whatever. And it made me realize that this was actually the genesis of me wanting to become a storyteller director, because you were actually staging all your different characters. Think about it. Everybody stages their action and they're making their own movies. And I can remember as a little kid bringing my face really close to it because I kind of liked the composition. That I didn't want to make everything like a stage play. The problem with the toys is it's a stage play. It's just so wide. But I really do think the toy collecting was the genesis of wanting to become a film director. It's really neat.
That is really cool. And it's funny because, so we talked before we went on the air a little bit about how the collecting piece of it kind of got to the genesis even of this newer project, which before we go any further, I'm actually going to show the Kickstarter video for that.
That would help. That would
I think it would definitely be cool. All right. So, of course, let's see.
You're the tech genius like me.
And me, tech genius with this. All right, here we go.
Blast 'em Up is a sci-fi follow-up to my film Shoot 'em Up, starring Clive Owen. Hi, I'm Michael Davis, writer-director of 7 feature films. I want to take the super clever gunplay that's in Shoot 'em Up and put the same cool, crazy, imaginative action into a futuristic world. There's one big problem getting Blast 'em Up made. Every studio I showed the script to shot me down. Even though many fans said,
"Shoot 'em up is mankind's greatest achievement."
The film wasn't a hit, so there was no way anybody was going to give me the money to make a big sci-fi movie about a band of space thieves who attempt the greatest heist of their careers only to encounter aliens bent on destroying mankind. Because I love making action movies so much... Bring out! Then bam! Oh cool, he fried him! I decided to say, blast you, Hollywood. I'm gonna find a way to make it myself. I taught myself computer-generated animation. I created everything in the Blast 'em Up footage you've just seen, from animation, set, spaceship, and prop design, plus the lighting and camera work. I feel so empowered. Nobody can stop me from making a movie. Whatever fantastic idea I come up with, I can now put into an animated film. High-quality feature film animation can now be produced by a single animator. I hope Blast 'em Up is a revolution in feature film animation, because I'm going to teach others my process in hopes of inspiring future solo animation wizards to make their own CGI movies. I'll do this through detailed making-of videos, and I'll be appearing on several Movie Geek YouTuber shows to talk about the making of Blast 'em Up. These Movie Geek YouTubers are supporting the film. I'll be a guest on their shows where I'll also tell my funny and horrific stories about the film business. I am so grateful for their backing. I'm not crazy thinking I can animate a feature film all by myself. I just did it. I single-handedly drew a 2D animated feature, Nyx, that premiered at the world-renowned Annecy International Animation Film Festival. To make Blast 'em Up, I need your help, you animation, sci-fi, action-adventure fans. Most computer-generated features cost tens of millions of dollars, sometimes $100 million. I just need $80,000 to fund all the stuff I can't do myself. I need great voice actors, maybe even a star, and performers for motion capture shoots. Hard drive storage, CGI models, and mocap processing fees need to be covered, plus money for a composer and a professional soundtrack design. I am making a bunch of cool rewards for the support. You can even be a featured extra in the film. All backers will get to see Blast 'em Up at a virtual premiere, months before it shows on the popular streamers. Remember, if you can't contribute, you can still help by sharing the project on your social media. I really appreciate all the support and excitement for the project. Oh, I gotta get a deflector shield in here.
That is fantastic.
You know how many takes I had to do of me shooting the gun? Because I would make all these non-heroic faces, and I was like, I just look so uncool. You can even see my body language is a little bit bad. I'm like, thank God I'm a director, not an actor. But anyway, so that's Blast 'em Up.
I don't know. You did pretty darn good. So, and the cuts were smooth, so nobody noticed if you didn't say.
Yeah, but 20 takes.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
So this is so cool to me. So let me give you a little backstory.
Yes.
Way back when I was teenage big nerdy, I wanted to make movies. That's what I wanted to do. But I was also very much a homebody. I did not want to leave my family in semi-rural Pennsylvania. So for me, it was never an option. So when I looked at like, okay, what do I do next? I looked at culinary school, I looked at community college, and I looked at, okay, do I like try to go make it somewhere big? And I ended up choosing none of the above and just I went to Penn State for a year, but I spent most of my day trying to go get Star Wars toys and skipping classes. But this is definitely so cool to me to see the whole behind the scenes process of it. For my graduation project now 20 years ago, I did a whole big 1-hour presentation on the creation of Star Wars, which obviously tons of inspiration comes from that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so funny. As a kid, I watched James Bond. I mean, my holy trinity is James Bond, Star Wars, and Indiana Jones. Those are the three that really, but it's because I didn't have friends or a ton of nerdy friends that were into movies and talking about directors, it never occurred to me that it could be a career. So I went to art school and became an illustration major because I love the artwork on paperback books and the artwork on movie posters. And I love this guy N.C. Wyeth. And then all of a sudden, when I saw Star Wars and I was beginning art school, halfway through art school, I said, I got to become a filmmaker. And it was it's so terrible that that it's such a cliche. Star Wars made me go into the film business, but and then can I tell you? So I actually directed George Lucas in a short. Really? The head of Time Warner was Steven Spielberg's mentor, but he was actually dying of cancer, and they were going to have this big last birthday party for him. And at the time in Hollywood, they were making these gag films, right, that were sort of spoofs. And there was one for Steven Spielberg called Citizen Steve, which was a takeoff on Citizen Kane. So I was working for a company that did a lot of the behind the scenes for Spielberg. And Spielberg wanted to do a takeoff on It's a Wonderful Life, but with this guy, Steve Ross. So I got to do all these spoofs of what happened to these people if Steve Ross hadn't been born, like if Jimmy Stewart hadn't been born. And so I put Steven Spielberg in a padded room, where he's, building, like a E.T. out of shaving cream, kind of. Anyway, and so then I got to work with George Lucas. But I didn't want to be the nerd, saying, hey, I became a filmmaker and I went to USC Film School because of you. But the really crazy thing is that in a world without Steve Ross, George Lucas would become a car mechanic because that's what he was into. And my gag was he opened up the hood and he was noodling around, and then the car engine made an R2-D2 noise. And then he looks at the camera and a light bulb goes off, like maybe I should do something with this. But then he was friends with the producer of this, and I got to sit there for an hour lunch with George, and he was talking with my other friend George. And he was talking about the edit droid and non-linear editing. But the way George talked, it was like I couldn't understand what he was saying. It was so lofty and so technical and so aesthetic and whatever big ideas. I go, oh, thank God I didn't really engage him in like my dumb, I went to USC talk. But obviously it was like a huge moment in my life. And also I was a Spielberg fan. So it was kind of like, wow. So I don't know where that went, but because Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
And I'll tell you, that was something else. I'll put the Star Wars spin on it again. Lucas is reported, I guess, disdain for the studio system and how they get his movies made. It definitely, I can see it in this project.
Oh,
you're looking to do it outside of that system.
Well, you reminded me, okay. So I want to dispense any thought you had like, oh, I should have become a filmmaker. Okay. Now, I love films. I went into films because I thought it was the greatest. It is the greatest art form. Editing is like music. It's got a rhythm and you add sound, there's drama, comedy, color, composition. It's everything, painting all in one. But it is a very, everything they say about Hollywood and the sleaziness of it, I hate to say, is true. And if you ever watch Entourage, and everybody thinks, oh, it can't be like it. It is exactly like Entourage. And I also have found that I love in directing. I like screenwriting because I'm working and creating this universe in this world. I like storyboarding, right? And I like the editing and the post project. But on the set, I describe my role as a director. I'm the concierge of the set. I work about 5 minutes and everybody else is scurrying around and I'm just waiting to yell action. And then I might give it a little note to the actor, and that would add up to 5 minutes of work all day. And then it's really boring unless you like to schmooze. And I don't like to schmooze. I like to work. And so this animated project, I'm creative 95% of the time because I'm the cinematographer. I'm the actor, I'm the production designer, I'm the prop master, director, and all that stuff. And I just love that I just work. I don't care about making money in the film business. I'm looking for the experience and being in control. And that goes back to, I think you would have been very frustrated in the film business, but being your own boss, taking what you love and being the master of your universe and being a success at it, that's what I admire most. And I think you made a great choice. If I were to do it again, I would become a novelist because I wouldn't have to. I mean, I could tell you all these crazy, terrible stories, like, maybe later on, I don't want to dwell on, I'll tell you like what my encounter with Steven Spielberg was like on that short. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't what I dreamed about.
Yeah, that is amazing. Let's talk a little bit more about Blast 'em Up. So is this from a story standpoint, is this like a spin-off of Shoot 'em Up? Is this a completely new set of characters? What are we looking at here?
It's a completely new set of characters. So everything is a intellectual property. It's easier to make something if people know it. And I was thinking about maybe I should do an animated follow-up to Shoot 'em Up. But then I would have to go to the studio. New Line owns the rights. I would have to negotiate and all that kind of stuff. And I said, anybody who was a fan of the movie, if I say it's Shoot 'em Up in space, that they would know it was me. So why not just call it Blast 'em Up? It's, all the cool, Shoot 'em Up was all the cool things you could do with a gunfight, but this is all the cool things you can do with a blaster. And it also opens up this world of imagination. I always loved robots and spaceships, but also I always think action scenes have to have some way the hero gets out of a situation that you've never seen before. How many times have you seen gun, 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 or he knocks the car and the other car flips? It's like nothing, right? But I had always been interested in Star Wars, that whatever that lightsaber beam was must have some kind of electrical field, right? And you know how they say don't put like your fan in the bathtub because you'll electrocute yourself. There was a scene in Goldfinger where you get somebody. I always had this neat idea where there's one Jedi against a ton of stormtroopers, but somehow he makes the room flood and he puts the lightsaber in the water. He's above the water, and then the energy goes through the pool of water and electrocutes all of them all at one time, right? That's cool. Well, I'm just going to do it with a blaster where he gets the water to flood in and then he electrocutes them. But I also kind of like this idea of connecting the old gunfights with the new gunfights, because the hero wields a blaster, but he also has an old Colt 45. And throughout the movie, it's the combo of the old gun with the bullet, like shooting the water to make it flood, because a blaster wouldn't make the tank open up. It would just, sizzle it, right? So he's always getting out of situation by using both a bullet and a blaster. But I don't have the rights to Shoot 'em Up, so it's a spiritual follow-up. But it has nothing really to do with the other thing, and that's fine because it's five. What am I going to do? Did Clive Owen get in cryogenic suspension and come out in the future? and that everybody say that was stupid. So it's the spirit of it. But
that's what matters. To use an analogy in the toy world, Four Horsemen Studios is a newer studio. They own their own IP now. They created it from scratch, but they made their bones, so to speak, being the designers for He-Man, Masters of the Universe.
Okay.
So their new line, it's called Mythic Legions. It's not new anymore. It's 10 years old. But it's very much, you can see the inspiration of where it came from. And, they described it as, it's kind of like He-Man, but with more mythic lore to it.
They say in movies when you launch something new, people really love the same but different. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's really what that company is doing. And I bet you it's going to be a big success.
It is.
I think people love discovering something new. I know it's great to have your favorites, but I always love it when you see something new. Like when Star Wars came out, I'd seen a little bit, and I had no idea what a great experience it was going to be. I mean, you were too young to go when it first came out in the theater, right?
Yes.
I cannot tell you how transformational and almost a religious experience it was to see it for the first time. You can't imagine. And it was such a surprise. You had all this, you knew Star Wars and you kind of knew what to expect, or you had seen a big CGI movie prior. So it wasn't like they never had visual effects like that before.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's, you don't get to do it that often anymore. You don't get to go to anything and be like, wow, that is not something I've seen. And it's fun when you can do that. I read a book recently where it was about a theme park where a flood hit and then everybody basically became like feral crazy people and started killing each other. But it was told from the point of view of the reporter writing the book about it and interviewing the subjects. And it was so different, just the format, rather than just, okay, first person, third person. It is a completely different way of looking at it. And, I probably read a different book every week. And that one was, I don't know, 3 months ago. And it's still stuck in my head because it was so different.
Well, that's great. I always told my kid, readers are leaders, right? And you can see people that love reading books are entrepreneurial. But the thing that is great about that structure that you just described is if it was just the thing in the theme park, it would have been the same. But the great thing is when you cross cut and you have multiple storylines that fit together, because then it forces the filmmakers to, rather than having the scene in the past being 4 minutes, it has to be 2 minutes. And so the scene is better because it's tighter and you have time to go to this other storyline. So you're getting more because you're having 2 big storylines rather than 1. It's kind of the way Seinfeld was great because they had 3 storylines all packed. It makes it jam-packed.
Yeah.
Oh.
Seinfeld's another great example of something that was just totally different when you got it compared to where we are now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the animation process some, because this really fascinates me. I think that a lot of people are going to look at it and think there's so much stigma about AI, and this is not AI. That it's almost
no AI, please, people, no.
No, and I think it's a little, when we talk about like how you're able to do it as one person because of the technology, you're creating everything. It's just putting it to work. It's the engine.
Well, first of all, is the other thing that I hope that comes out of this is I know there are people that have their screenplays and they're big, either sci-fi, and they need visual effects, and they think, well, how am I ever going to get big enough to make this movie? Or they are animators and they're playing around. I'm hoping that I can inspire people, a legion, an army, you saw it in my video, to make their own movies. And it's just because the software has gotten so much easier to use. And the software I use, it's actually not the industry standard. It's called iClone 8.
Okay.
But the great thing is they have a sister program called Character Creator. And you take a model, a figure, like you can just start out with a basic strong guy. And they have all these dials and they say, I want to make him thinner. I want to make him taller. I want him to have like fangs come out. And you just basically are sculpting. You don't have to have any skill except knowing how to go left and right. And you can make your own character. But the great thing is then it's entirely rigged, and they make money by I want to buy this armor and I want to have him this spear and this big boots or whatever. But then they have these things called blend shapes, which are how you do actually the expressions and the lip sync. And it's entirely rigged for you. And they also have a function that if you want it, like you saw, the character kind of looks like Clive Owen. There was a character in my video that looked like Michael Caine. You can take a photograph, a straight-on photograph, and you plug it in, and in 10 seconds, it'll turn your model to about looking 90% like that person. So it's just literally amazing. And then you just press a button and you go into the animation studio and you start doing everything. But let's say you go, let's say I can't get Clive Owen for this and I get Nick Cage. I can press a button and take my model of Nick Cage and it dives, magically into Clive Owen, and Clive Owen's animation goes right into Nick Cage. And so there's a lot that speeds it up. And then I could go on and on and on about how easy it is to keyframe animate, but also I'm using a combination of that with a little bit of mocap. But instead of just using realistic mocap, like let's say somebody's walking, I take the hip and I exaggerate the up and down so he's not so realistic. But there's a program that came out and it's not AI, but they thought it would be hip, and it's called Move.ai. And it makes like almost Jim Cameron Avatar level mocap with your iPhone. And there've been a lot of softwares that you could just take a piece of video and it could create mocap from it, but it doesn't understand the Z-axis. It doesn't understand how far you're leaning forward. Okay. But with this, you can set up 2 to 12 iPhones, right? I only use 4, like a box. And it captures everything, and you could film 2 actors, and because there's multiple cameras, it doesn't lose It doesn't freak out when it can't see an actor when one passes in the other, because the other 3 cameras are seeing it. And so you can stage it's really hard if you're doing key animation to make characters interact and he passes in front, or they fight together, or they're shaking hands. But you can film multiple actors together and it captures it magically with just your phones. And so if you think about it, you at home, if you're thinking about doing it, you get a bunch of iPhones, you stage it, and you got to clean up the animation, but it gets you about 80% there.
That is so cool. I didn't even know that. That was amazing.
Yeah. And so my rendering is not going to look super realistic. And I purposely made my characters not look realistic. Their eyes are a little bit bigger, but not super cartoony. If he's tall, they're a little taller. If they're big, they're a little bit bigger. So that people aren't expecting realism, because I'm not one of these geeks that knows all the dials and getting the glistening in the water. But I do think the rendering is a little bit better, or maybe a lot better than the Clone Wars or the Bad Batch. And I think at the end of the day, people care about what are they seeing? What's the Clive Owen making love to Monica Bellucci? What a crazy freaking scene, or a skydiving gunfight. They care about that more than they do if it was beautifully rendered. They'd love if it was beautifully rendered, but you first got to get the content right first.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Well, let's stop talking about it and let's show a little bit of behind the scenes of the creation.
Oh, you found that stuff. That's great.
Yeah, I do.
I'll talk of this. So that's me. I did that. I made it there he goes. I made it a little bit more like Clive Owen. That's where I use, you can keep it going, but you can see I'm just dialing it to change, the proportions. You see how I made them bigger? It was like in an instant. And I do this thing like kit bashing. Now, you've heard about people when they made Star Wars, they kit bashed all these plastic models, a Rebelle and the airplanes and the battleships, and they made and stuck little doodads on it. Well, you're just doing that in the digital world, right? And so and this is the Move AI thing I told you with the iPhone. See? They're just filming him in volume. And look how good this is. I just did it as a goof. Look how they cross in front of each other, right? Look at that. Now, again, their arms and their wrists are a little goofy. Here's a Alan Rickman character I made for my friend, and I took that same animation. Here's a recent thing. I have not animated the facial expressions. This is the first time I hired as a test real actors to do a scene. But you can hear the audio if I shut up that he's talking like Alan Rickman. Well, I jumped ahead, but anyway,
Nous sommes vus au dîner de la Nouvelle Fédération l'autre soir.
Désolé.
Tiens!
But look at the live action down below.
59 km prise pour un soupçon d'acidité et son absence de charpente.
Je vous écoute.
Je prédis qu'avec l'âge, il prouvera que c'est critique avec tort.
Donc vous m'accusez, moi, de l'avoir ouvert 15 ans trop tôt?
Plutôt 20.
That's incredible that we're at this point in technology.
And you and I were talking, I am not a tech geek. I am an idiot, right? So if I can do it, think of people at home, even if you just wanted to make a short, or you just wanted just to have fun, right? Now, this is a piece of animation I made using a thing called Deep Motion. And this is without iPhone. I just took a clip of Billy Crudup talking about how do you do a one-man show? How do you do a soliloquy? And it still does pretty good, right? And I got this a little while ago here that you can't just take the mocap and you can keep it playing if it goes on. I go in and I exaggerate sometimes, especially with lip sync. If somebody goes, ooh, right, I make the lips really pursed, or ah, right, or I exaggerate it because these are the moments where the audience can kind of latch onto, yes, it's in sync. The was right there. Not that they're thinking that. And so that was just a little demo I made of where I exaggerated the lips. And then let's see, that's the end of it. But everybody, and like the iClone and the character creator, you can try it out for a month for free. And the software is not like Maya or now Photoshop. You have to be on like a subscription and you're paying $22 a month and it sucks, right? You buy it once And then when they do an upgrade 3 years later, you have to pay for the add-on, but that's not much. They make their money by you buying models or buying clothes or hats or props. And those things, you could buy sometimes a gun for $5 or $20. Most of the clothes are $30 or less. And the other thing is people go, well, it's iClone. You know, that's kind of, what if I want to go and work for a bigger place? The iClone exports to Maya. It exports to Blender. My friend Kevin uses iClone. He worked on the Flash TV show. And, you know, they make these digital doubles. And he was constantly using iClone. He's better at rendering. He'd export to Unreal Engine, and it looks better. But I only can learn so much.
I feel like once you learn something, too, it's like, oh, cool, I learned it. And then it's like, all right, this is the new software.
Yeah, that's true. But like people ask me, how do you feel about AI? And I'm not against it. But the most important thing with filmmaking is, or at least to get known, is that you have to have a voice. My favorite filmmakers are ones where, you know, only that guy can make that movie, whether it's Wes Anderson or whether you think he's terrible. But I like some of his stuff like Michael Bay. It's only a Michael Bay film. And I'm sure AI will get to that point. But how do you make those things that it generates that you type in have your voice, your signature? Yeah. And it hasn't gotten to the point where it would be easy for me to animate. And so I'm not going to learn the early versions of things, and it's going to change and change and change. When it's finally like everybody's using and it's super easy, maybe I will. And I have an advantage because at the end of the day, like the problem I see a lot of times, like I see these great YouTube videos of amazing animation, but the people aren't good storytellers because it's, again, a longer process to learn how to write. Like, what's that Malcolm Gladwell book? The one where you have to learn 10,000 hours to be a genius. Like, you're a genius at toys, right? Yeah. But you started to become a genius at that when you were a little kid, because not only did you buy the toys, but you understand the manufacturing, the history of the manufacturer, right? The iterations, and you were training yourself to be a genius in that, and for 10,000 hours at least. And so the other thing I would say is if you want to tell stories and make animations, you should also invest in learning screenwriting. And that's one of the things, going back to my pitch, I'm hoping people will come back and help with the Kickstarter, is I have these, one of the rewards I have is these info blasts for creators. And I don't know about you, but have you ever tried to learn something on YouTube and there's a tutorial? And yeah, and I apologize, man. I'm a big blabbermouth, so I try to stop myself. But you go there and it takes like 10 minutes to find the 30 seconds that you need. And part of it is, and I know you have to do it where they go, the first minute is, hey, will you subscribe and like? It really helps me. I'm not doing any of that. I have the first one, I actually posted it yesterday, is the 2 best books on screenwriting. And I explain why in less than 2 minutes. And I'm going to do 50 info blasts for creators that want to know about the film business or anything from illustration. I was a novelist. I've been a novelist, comic book illustrator, animator, storyboard artist, entrepreneur, indie filmmaker, studio filmmaker. I have all these stories. Like, I know these secret tricks of how to help yourself get higher up being picked at Sundance that they never tell you. You know, how do you conduct yourself when you go into a studio meeting, right? You know, besides kissing the ring. And but I'm going to make them super fast so you get the gist of it without having to sit through a long video, because I don't need the screen time. I just want to get the information out there. And I'm somebody that has succeeded to the middle. I'm not a big success, but I want people to learn from my mistakes because I've made a ton of them.
That is awesome. And, you know, it's funny because this is a good time to kind of do hey, you should look at this Kickstarter pitch. When I look at a Kickstarter for a full feature movie here, animated or not, $80,000, that feels like you wouldn't even be able to get a 2-minute clip out of that. It's crazy.
Well, it's so interesting. Like, did you ever see this movie 10 that came out? It's a CGI movie. God, I wish I could remember. Anyway, the guy made it for like $10 million right at the end. Guillermo came in. Anyway, but the thing about it is everything is a committee. And that's what takes so much time and money, is to get the sign off. Like, let's say you get the script, right? And you're going to give it to the studio. Then they have the guys that storyboard it, right? Well, think about how many times you have to give it to the director and then the animators, and they have to do it and redo it and before they actually commit to doing the final, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically getting the sign-offs, right? It's okay now, we've approved it, everybody agrees this is how we should spend our time, and they go do it. Well, if I'm this, when I now I used to be a storyboard artist. I did like Ninja Turtles and Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh, no way. That's so
yeah,
cool.
I worked for John McTiernan, the Die Hard director. But now when I storyboard, my storyboards are unintelligible except for me. But think about, instead of spending 2 days storyboarding a sequence, I can say this is what in my head, and it's done in 10 minutes. And then if I'm the cinematographer, the editor, I'm not animating anything I don't need. Everything is approved immediately because I'm the guy. So you're cutting out the whole army of people that need to get okays. And if the software have creates a look that it looks like high end, or at least like Clone Wars, it is going to be almost as good as the studio thing, but really, really cheap because you don't need approvals. I mean, think about you. If you were working for a big corporation making your toys, right? You would have you would sit around and go, should we buy this line or not? Should we accept the wholesale price, or should we negotiate further? Think about many hours you would spend. But you and your wife are the guys, right?
Oh, when I was running restaurants for years in the corporate world, that's why I wanted out of them. I'm running the business. I'm responsible for the bottom line, but I have to get permission for everything. Oh, you want to spend $1,000 on that? Well, you need to get 2 different forms filled out, and I hated it.
And I wouldn't mind doing that if the person worked hard at educating themselves and was invested. I can't tell you how many times, especially again, going back to how hard the film business is that the reason why I got Shoot 'Em Up made is what happens is the script goes in, and a reader who's like 21 or 22 reads the script. They give it to a junior exec who gives it to their mid-level exec, who then goes to the top guy. And these people go, I can't go to the boss. I can go to him 2 times a year to say, this is so fantastic, you should buy it. You can't go, right? So they're already inclined to say no. Even if they like it, they go, if I do this one, I've used up one of my tokens, and that means for the next 9 months, I can't go to the boss. Do I love it enough to give up that token? And but I mean, I mean, like, I'll give you an example. So a friend of mine, big producer, had a meeting with the head of the studio at the time at Paramount. And my friends said, why don't we go for a walk rather than sitting, in the stuffy office? And so they went and walked around the Paramount lot. And my friend led him to the back lot, and they had just refurbished their New York Street. And the head of the studio looks at the New York Street and goes, oh my God, I never knew this was here. He's the head of the studio, and he doesn't know he has a new gigantic backlot. But that's the level of hubris that you're dealing with. And so if I don't like dealing with people, I don't suffer fools gladly. And so I'm so happy animating now because I don't have to deal with people like that.
Yeah. Have you, I forget what it's called here, but have you seen, they did a whole series on Paramount, The Offer, about the making of The Godfather. Have you seen that at all?
I saw The Offer. Yes, I loved it. I especially like that kid that's in it. But yes, and I'm sure they obviously maybe exaggerated, but I do think they had problems with the mafia and all that stuff. I loved it. Right. And we were just talking about that, my friend, the other day, that actor, Matthew Good, and he plays Bob Evans. Mm-hmm. So great. Yeah. But like I said, Entourage and that, the film business is not that far off, Oh,
that's interesting. So it is funny. They did have a lot of mafia issues. It's one of my little sub hobbies of reading. I like reading historical, anything about the mafia, but they definitely had some issues with that. It was,
of course,
very interesting.
I thought it was interesting how they said this is going to create a mythology about you guys, and people are going to love you and romanticize you rather than saying that you guys are a bad thing. And it did exactly that.
It sure did. And the guy who really kind of was the go-between. I think he was the Gambino boss, Joe Bonanno. He was the one who kind of saw that, and he's like, and I think in a lot of ways, revisionist history, he had himself almost kind of portrayed as the Vito Corleone. Yes, and it's a very interesting story, but I digress.
I'm going to digress. So there was a guy who lived across the street from me named Mr. Bonanno, just like your guy, right? But the weird thing is, every day when he drove home, he'd drive past his house and he'd drive around the block twice to make sure he wasn't followed before he pulled in. And wasn't sure whether he was a gangster or worked for the CIA, because I lived in Washington, D.C. I'm going to digress. My next door neighbor was the senator from New Mexico, Dominici. And I got to use his Library of Congress card to check out all these old books on Sean Connery and James Bond published in the 60s that you couldn't find anywhere. Picture finding a place where you can get old toys from a senator. Anyway.
That is super cool.
Yeah,
super cool. So this is the time, guys, where I say, if you're watching this here live now or on the replay, I have a link in the description to head on over to the Kickstarter. Like Michael said, if you can't do a lot, do a little. If you can't do anything, just spread the word.
And people actually just email me saying, hey, I think this looks great or whatever. That makes my day, because I'm posting, I'm sending things out. And when I get an email from somebody, it makes me feel like I'm being heard, rather than it's just a churn. I'm just sending it out and nothing is happening. So you can just write me, or you can go to, if you don't want to go, you can get information at blastemup.com. That's also a way. And there's an email link there too.
Yeah. It's really cool. I'm really excited. I'm really hoping we have until June
27th.
27th. Okay, so we got a whole month and a half here.
Yeah.
So
I'm hoping maybe one day they can be a toy, or maybe I'll get a 3D printer and I can send you the only Blast 'em Up figurine in the world. How about that?
That would be cool. It's funny because that's my new little obsession each night. I'm sitting there learning 3D printing, reading about it, trying to decide what my first printer is going to be. So cool.
Can I make a pitch for the software again?
Hit me.
So this iClone character creator that you can dial in and make whatever you want, they now have plugins that you can take your character even after you've posed it, and then you can 3D print it. So you could literally in a weekend teach yourself how to make a toy version of yourself. And then if there's like a couple, everything, there's an app for it. You just enter it into an app, and then boom, because it is using, this FBX, it's a universal language. It's like the Microsoft Word for 3D models, right? And every application understands it, and you feed it in and it'll print it out.
Now that's going to be my new thing tonight. I'm going to be sitting there on I'm going
to email you the links of the software that you need.
I wrote it down. I got my little legal pad here. I wrote it all down. I'm all in. I can't wait to look into that. I was going to ask you, hold on, my brain just went. I swear my wife's like, you have selective amnesia. It comes and goes. And I'm like,
no, it's I have it worse.
It's definitely something.
No, but I did it on screen too. I was thinking about the guy that had the problem with the Red Bull. Yeah. I should know who it's. They started out as two African American brothers. They did the movie with about the heist. And again, see, I should know their names because they're great filmmakers. But I'm
finding myself at that now, and I'm 40, and I'm like, I wait, what was the name of that person? And it's, if I haven't seen them in a month, it's gone. It's really scary. But what I wanted to talk to you about was, so the toy world is slowly moving into messing around with digital assets. And Hasbro tried it, didn't go too well. They did it as NFTs. McFarlane's doing a different round of it. McFarlane's doing it as, okay, buy the toy, get the digital model. And I think a lot of people, myself included until recently, were like, what the hell am I going to do with a digital model of the Penguin?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I haven't gotten there, and I'm going to get the terms wrong. But there was an NFT thing that launched that they made like 100 million. It was with the chimps. What are they called? Have you seen this thing with the chimps?
I think so, yeah.
And I don't know if they're going to achieve it, but the one things that they did is they've created, a universe that's online, like these, what are they called? These morgues, the massive online gaming, whatever, right? Where you get 50,000 people one time. They're creating a world like this, but there is no game, there is no goal. It's just people go there and they live there. And depending on what you do, you actually get tokens and you can buy a bigger house, right? You go to, right? But these NFT avatars that you buy can become your 3D avatar in this world, right? And so I think at least in that case, you're going to see these sort of virtual reality environments where you're basically buying the person you're going to be.
Yeah.
But we were talking before the show. I got into toy making, collecting some toys. I got my Big O and I got my Lupin, and this was my gateway drug, the swordfish from Cowboy Bebop that was given to me, and it made me understand the joy, right? Because it's not a movie, but touching it, and you think about the design and the sculpturing of all these things. They are really great works of modern art. But I ended up starting to buy digital aspects just as a collection for fun. There's a site called Daz 3D, and they had a really nice James Bond Aston Martin DB5, right? And I go, I just have to have that. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I was on there and they'd post a spaceship or they'd do a space station. I go, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I liked putting it up, and then I could move the camera around, and I kind of just liked it. I just wanted to own it. And I understand the feeling when you see a really nice toy, you go, I don't know, I just kind of have this feeling that I want to own it, right? And it gives me pleasure. But then because I owned it, I started playing around with the CGI, right? And getting, oh, that's how you animate it. Oh, that's how you light it. And kind of the idea of treating digital assets as a toy led to me learning the CGI, which then led to me making a Blast 'em Up. So until like Todd McFarlane gives you some functionality, it might not take off, but they will figure out some kind of functionality. Like again, I'm going to go back and be a little bit of pitch myself. I made all these really great science fiction GIFs. You know how people send GIFs when they're and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have some sci-fi ones? I have an alien, with 6 arms giving the thumbs up. That's better than just 2 thumbs up. Well, think about if you bought a digital toy and you could customize, I want to send you a GIF, right? And I'm taking my He-Man and doing, yay, right? Then you go, that I'm making my toy not only beautiful, or maybe you make it as your screensaver and you do specifically the angle that you want. That would be really fun. But I do think it's kind of the reason why theater has still survived with TV and movies is sometimes you can't replace the reality. And I didn't know this as a kid, but then when I got the gateway drug, there is something about being able to touch it that gives me more joy, that has it there. And even just having it in my peripheral vision, there is something different than something that's on the screen. So I'm a proponent of digital, but I also think that this is always going to be here.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see. And I'm probably one of the slower adapters at almost everything. So as I start seeing uses for it, that it's starting to get close because I'm the last person to do it.
Well, why don't you look, if you could do a poll, if there was some kind of digital asset, like if somebody wanted a 3D version of you, if I created a 3D version of you and sent it to you that people could download for free, what would they want as a free digital asset that would just be fun as a beginning? I'll make that for you for free. Okay. And you can just give it away for free. But I want to make something that people would really want to have.
Yeah.
But it could be really fun.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. That is interesting. That's an interesting
and then then you learn what it would be your experimentation, but you wouldn't have to license or pay anything from anybody else. And you could actually pioneer because you have a relationship one-to-one, like the big places do. What would they really want? I have to tell you. So So I also gave out, as they have these things called lead magnets when you're trying to do a Kickstarter where you get people to sign up so you can send them emails saying, hey, Blast 'em Up is launching. I made 10 digital greeting cards, right? You might later on, I think they might be in the file I sent you. And one of them is like, it's James Bond with Goldfinger, right? And Goldfinger, the laser is going between his legs and Bond's all upset. And, you know, and Bond says, do you want me to talk? Do you want me to die? And he goes, no, I want you to have a good time. It's your birthday. And he hits a button, and instead of being lasered, the balloons come down, right? I made 10 of these cards, right? And I put them out, and people just had to sign up, go to Blast 'em Up time. They could get them for free, right? And I boosted it on Instagram. Guess how many people downloaded these amazing digital greeting cards out of all this?
How many?
0.
Really?
0. And then I have these animated gifts that you could get for free, at least 5 for free. You can get 40 of them, right? And I got 3 people downloading, right? Now, maybe they thought by giving me the email, they were all nervous about that. But so that's why I say, maybe I'm not as in tune with what people would really want from digital assets. But if you found out what they really wanted, I could create something rather than me guessing what they would want. Because I don't have that
poll, but I'll definitely do something here.
Yeah,
I'll definitely have to think about it.
But it'd be really fun because, you know, have you seen this guy Beeble? I'm getting off track. Do you know this big NFT guy? So this guy, I love it because he's a success. I'm big into work ethic. This guy spent like 7 years every day. He said, I'm going to learn a new piece of software, and within a day, I'm going to do a new piece. And sometimes they were very animated. And then he ended up putting each one of these pieces in a giant single Photoshop image that if you put all the artwork together, original size must have been like 20 feet by 20 feet. And they auctioned it off at Christie's, and it went for like $80 million as an NFT. Okay. But this guy is so good. And remember, all this time he was giving away free assets, and he was just doing this to learn his craft. He didn't know he was going to explode. But he has these sort of you should check out Beeple, Beeple, like people, but people. Yeah. And they all have a science fiction end, you know, and he'd like have like, you know, those giant wind-up robots from the 50s, right? But they're then walking amongst the Star Wars universe, or sometimes he has a political commentary, and his craftsmanship is really amazing, and they're kind of animated, and he sells them as single artworks, as if it's a painting on the wall. So, and so I also do think it's sort of like, remember they did the Cabbage Patch dolls where everyone was original?
Oh yeah.
I think that's really neat, but most of the people that do NFTs, they do crappy, like it's the same figure, but he has a different hat, and the hat doesn't even fit. It's like a paste on. Yeah. But I do think like if you could get the only Iron Man, right, that was posed a certain way, I don't know whether the audience would want that or not, but I do think that you're the only one with this. The single art piece digital might be neat.
Okay, I'll definitely do that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm looking here. I know it's silly. And so, you know, I got to meet Kevin Eastman of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yes. And I have to tell you, so I bought one of his recent comic books, right? And I was so amazed. You probably do the same thing. The care in which it was delivered, the packaging and the handwriting. And then he added a little trading card. And I thought the trading card extra was a nice touch. It made my day. And anyway, I'm going on.
Oh, that's okay. Listen, I want to throw the official full-on trailer up here before it gets any later. So let me do that now, and then we'll kind of digress. And we're at the hour mark, so I promise people I won't keep you much longer, but I do want to show this. So without further ado, let's set this up here.
I've been thinking. It's just good business. Sorry.
Clear for takeoff. Warp activated.
Think of all the things that think these days. Everything.
What a way to make a living.
Wait, gets worse.
The Michael Caine voice acting is just perfect.
Well, I have to tell you, so I stole that. I mean, I'm actually taking Michael Caine's real voice.
Oh.
And that actually is Clive Owen's voice, but it's not from any movie. I found these series of commercials that he did. And so in some ways, the trailer is built around the actual dialogue I could get from the commercial. It's like there's one that he goes, I've been thinking, everything's thinking cars, thinking machines, thinking factories, thinking agriculture, right? And it's all this funny thing about thinking. And in a couple places, I told you could make motion capture from just the straight video. I actually motion captured part of him from the commercial. So some of his performance is actually motion captured. That's his movement using the deep motion. But Michael Caine, but you saw, if I took your face, I took the Michael Caine and it was like 10 seconds. I had a pretty decent Michael Caine, right? And you have an iconic face. And you know what? I was wondering, have you ever done the show with your Jedi hood that's your logo?
I never have.
I don't understand. So, I'm number one, I'm wondering why you haven't. But we could create a character that is that character in the Jedi hood, and we can move them around, but it's you.
Oh, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
That would be very cool. We'll have to definitely look into that one.
Yeah, it could be really funny.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Everybody, once again, hit the link in the description. Go check out the whole campaign. It is I've seen some Kickstarters thrown together where the campaign is not like, if you check this out, there's the amount of thought and care that went into this, the different reward tiers. It's a really, really cool, unique thing. Definitely check it out. Michael, anything else to add as I kind of start wrapping us up?
Well, the only thing I was going to say is to make the connection between what I'm doing and what you're doing is all the movies I love would be described as boys with toys movies, right? Look at Star Wars. I mean, this is full of toys and it just makes you happy. And I'm really glad that you are doing your show because you're reminding people. And I love you're saying you can grow up, but you can get older, but you don't have to grow up. I was going, you could be a marketing, you could be a screenwriter. Anyway, I'm just really grateful for the support.
Oh, absolutely. Well, everybody, on that note, you got to get old. You don't have to grow up. Be cool. Stay nerdy. Later.